Peace, 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 peace. We are back again. Peace, everybody. This is Sister Roo with Mawulisatemple, and I am here with Nick. We are here for UnRead, another Saturday full of interesting unread and reread books. We are always so glad to be able to bring you the best of the best of the best and tell you why we are sharing it. Well, this weekend is like no other. We listen. We are in the throes of 2025. We in here now. It's no turning back, right? So we in February, and we are enjoying ourselves. We are they said the groundhog saw their shadows, so we're supposed to have 6 more weeks of winter. Sounds like an opportunity to read to me. So Nick, I'm glad for us to be here today. Maybe we can give some of our followers some tips on something they can be reading during this chilly time of the year, because it's definitely chilly here. How about with you, Nick? What's going on?
And like we were speaking about offline, you asked me if I was excited about what I was bringing. I told you I'm always excited. We're always excited. When are we not always excited about the books that we're bringing? And yes, we have those recommendations for you. Regardless of what your interest is in, genre, topic, we have something for you. And you can even go back through our previous episodes to see what we have offered over the past year. But yes, it's a great time to read, to snuggle up and hibernate with a book.
Yes.
Yep, it's a perfect time to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I tell you, as we bring these books, I find myself realizing that I'm not really having enough time to be doing all this. I'm just like, wait a minute, I need some more time to read. And so this weather right here is a perfect opportunity to slow down, grab a mug of cocoa, and just, bring it back to the comfort of learning, the fun of learning, rediscovering, reimagining, and definitely taking a look at some of the things we have. Like I said, the things we haven't read and the things we want to reread. So I know that I'm excited about the book I'm bringing this week. I was a little torn because I had something else in mind, and then I remembered it's Black History Month. So I was just like, well, while I feel like every day is our history day because we hearing it, I said, well, we'll take advantage of the fact that this is the thing people will be talking about this month. So I figured I'd bring something that would shake that up a little bit. So not giving too much away, but I'm ready to share a little something I got over here.
All right. I mean, I'm ready to share mine as well. So, wow, let's go ahead and get into it.
Should we do a rock, paper, scissors, or do you just want me to go first? What's going on? You just want me to jump right in there and get us going?
Yeah, go ahead. Awesome. It's all you.
Yeah. Well, hey, everybody, again, it's just Sister Roo, and we are here for another episode of UnRead, and I am glad to be bringing to you on our first Saturday of African American Black History Month. I am glad to be bringing to you one of my favorite go-to books for reference. Not only text, but pictorial. We don't see a lot of images of ourselves, in a lot of older books. So it's nice to be able to find some older pictures to kind of help us out. So my offering this week is The Black West.
Ooh.
The Black West by Loren Katz. Right here. And this is a very loved book, as you can see.
Oh, yeah.
This is a very loved book, and it actually came from Weekway Library.
Wow.
I don't even know if that library is still around.
Mm.
But this is from the Weequahic Library on Osborne Terrace in Newark. So yeah. And like I said, one of the reasons why this is one of my favorite books is because not only is it text, it is pictorial. So I'm gonna put this picture up here and I'm gonna let everybody take a look at it. And I'm not gonna tell you who it is until the end of my talk. So if you think you know who this is, please put it in the chat. And Nick, you keep an eye on that, all right? So let's get into it. This is a reread. This is not an unread. This is a reread for me. And it actually was it was actually kind of like an unread because when I got the book, it was for the specific purpose of being able to share some of the pictures more than the text with some of the students that I was working with. So let me just give you a little bit about the author. The author, William Loren Katz, is the author of 22 books on U.S. history. He's the editor of 146 volume reprint series, The American Negro, History and Literature, and a 69 volume reprint series, The Anti-Slave Crusade in America. Mr. Katz, who taught U.S. history in New York secondary schools and in several colleges, has also served as a consultant to the Smithsonian Institution, the U.S. Senate, a committee of British House Commons, and to various school systems from Seattle, Washington to Dade County, Florida. He lives in New York City and he lectures here and abroad. So I'm going to show you his picture.
Big screen. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So this is who we're working with. Some of the other books that he's written was Black People Who Made the Old West, Black Indians, A Hidden Heritage, which if you haven't read that book right about now, that book would really kind of come in hand when we're doing some of the things that's going on right now in the country. It would definitely be a good book to take a look at. And and I can't say that some of the other titles aren't intriguing as well. Eyewitness, The Negro in American History, Five Slave Narratives, the Constitutional Amendments, the Album of the Civil War, the Album of Reconstruction, the Album of Nazism, The Invisible Empire, Ku Klux Klan, and their impact on history. So he has quite a few books that that would allow one to get a broader view of history than they probably have with their basic education. And that was one of the things that I found when I first came across this book. Growing up in public school system, you are taught a very specific curriculum of history. They pretty much give you what they give you, and if you go searching outside of that, you'll find something maybe. But if you don't know what you're looking for and you think you're being given everything, you don't even know to go look for anything else. So I'll have to admit that when I found this book, while I had done some studies, up into my adulthood about some of the struggles in the spaces and places our people have been in, some of this information was absolutely new to me, and it was unsettling, and it made me it was unsettling because I didn't know it, but it was refreshing to my view of how I could reframe some things and think a little bit deeper than what I had been given, and things made more sense. You know how when somebody gives you a story and the story sounds like you get the story, you understand the narrative, everything, but it just feel like something missing. You feel like you're not getting a part of the picture. And I know when we were in school, when we were taught about Black history, African Americans, they always just talked about the slaves, and they only talked about the slaves in the South. They only talked about like many other children didn't think slavery was anywhere else. We
Right.
only thought it was in the South.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Don't go down south, because that's where the bad people at. You know what I mean? But now, mind you, we wasn't taught about anything going across the map at all. But straight down that East Coast, that's what we were taught about. We were taught about from the top where they came in, Plymouth Rock, down to where Robert Treat came in down in Newark. You know what I mean? Then we taught about from Newark down to Florida. You know what I mean? And so a book like this, had something like this been introduced, it would have not left us with that feeling that something had been missing, because of course you have questions. You know, you have questions and you don't quite know how to phrase them because you're a child. You know what I mean? And even as an adult, sometimes you don't know the questions to ask, because what you've been taught has been so limited, you don't even know where to go and look for something else. So that's one of the things that I found interesting about this book. Now, the other thing was, so it expanded my thoughts on where Black people were. That's number one. Number two, one of the things that I really never liked about Black History Month was that they talked about the same people over and over again. They would make you think that the only people that was involved in slavery and freeing our people was Harriet Tubman. You know, like if you didn't know Harriet Tubman, like you ain't know nothing. And the fact that she was East Coast was, was one of those things where, okay, so you know Harriet Tubman, you know about the peanut butter man, you know about so they would teach us these very limited things. But again, it had nothing to do with the rest of the map. So I'm saying to myself, well, did like 5 people free all the slaves? Like, I know it had to be like a group of people, you know what I'm saying? So why don't we ever hear about some of these other people? And of course, needless to say, in this world, many people go nameless and faceless. Some of the greatest achievements, people will never know they took place by somebody that you never heard of, that'll never get mentioned, that'll never get credit. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. And that's a hard pill to swallow, but it's reality. Look at the country we're in. We're barely wanted here, and we built everything. So my thing is, how many small quote unquote cogs in the wheel have there been of people that just never get recognized and acknowledged? So when we give reverence to our ancestors, we always say ancestors known and unknown, because there will always be a plethora of ancestors that we know nothing about, and nobody can give us any answers because there's no record of it. So this book, The Black West, what this did for me was it gave me not only some other names to look at in terms of how to begin to find some of our people, but also it taught me about other people who were a part of the struggle to help free our people and give people their rights. So one of the first ones I want to mention here again, they have Frederick Douglass in here, and that was just like, oh, for everybody, like it was like we had like this little hat you pick out of it. Everybody get to do. So before school was done, everybody done did the same person at least once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this year you do Martin Luther King. Next year I'll do Martin Luther King. It was just, we always had those same people. And so speaking about Harriet Tubman, we used to ask questions about the Underground Railroad, like, first of all, you know what I'm saying, who was this amazing lady that got a train underneath the ground? See, this is how ignorant children can be sometimes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, you know, just a little bit of levity to it. You know, we were made to think that she was the mother of the Underground Railroad, that she was the one, and she just ushered everybody back and forth, back and forth, back and forth by herself. You know, this is what we are kind of taught, not directly, but by inference. You know what I mean? If they don't mention anybody else, who else are we supposed to think helped her? You know what I mean? So in this book, they talk about Sojourner Truth. Now, some people will say, well, she's just as popular in terms of picking, you know, someone to talk about every year. But for the children in the East Coast curriculum, we barely heard about her. We barely heard about her. So when it talked about, and I'll pull the image that they have of her up, because I told you one of the things I loved about this is that it was pictorial. That image here, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Let me blow that up. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
All right, let me see. All right. That image there that they have is Sojourner Truth. It says she was an ex-slave from New York that tried to abolitionize Ohio through lectures and later settled and died in Michigan. Like, we weren't taught about anything like that. So this woman, she wasn't out here fighting, protesting streets. She was doing lectures. Now it's right up my alley. That's right up somebody, you know what I'm saying? That's right up the alley of the educator. So you ask yourself, well, why didn't they tell us that they were trying to revolutionize and free us in more ways than just fighting? You know, of course they talk about, again, like I said, Frederick Douglass and law and how they were doing in some of these places, but they don't show some of the places where the women were doing things that were nonviolent and uplifting at the same time. They were considered violent by the people who didn't want you to know, but going around giving lectures, talking to people, just getting the word out there, letting people know. So that was one of the things that you know, really caught me about this book and what the children are not talking about. And so in here it has a whole section about the western stations of the Underground Railroad, and it talks about the Quakers, and a lot of people don't know who the Quakers are, but again, worth a look. So it says the reputed president of the Underground Railroad was an Indiana Quaker named Levi Coffin. And so it says who immigrated from North Carolina in the 1820s and carried on his dangerous work in Newport for the next 4 decades. His reminiscences provide a vivid glimpse of his busy station and many passengers he helped to freedom. And then they talked about his connection to some of the other leaders who were doing the work at that time too. So another leader in that time was Reverend Chapman Harris, who in 1839 came to Indiana from Virginia, and he was there on a mission for refusing to reveal where he had hidden slaves. And Griffith Booth was the one who was attacked by a Madison mob. So again, when we're writing about some of these heroes, these are people that are unsung, because you know, if we don't find them in little places like this, where have you ever heard some of these names? So I want to stop there for a second and give you an opportunity if you want to ask any questions.
Yeah, no, this is very fascinating, and I just want to say about Sojourner Truth and in her lectures, we actually, or I've actually taught, you know, probably her most famous lecture in my class, Ain't I a Woman? You know, and that one was very interesting because they have this fancy word now that they use in the buzzwords of the internet and the quote unquote woke spaces. And that fancy buzzword is called intersectionality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's when you have the causes of multiple, I guess you would call them marginalized groups, converging or overlapping. So Sojourner Truth, not only is she a Black woman, but well, not only is she Black, but she's a woman also. So you have the convergence of her being Black and being a woman, and that's what her speech touched on. So it appealed to both the feminist audience and also the Black audience as well, because she noticed that she wasn't receiving the same treatment that white women were receiving. And she was also talking about how she does all of this man's work, all of the hard work, while there's no one helping her into a carriage or laying out their jacket over the puddle for her.
Hello.
Yeah.
I ain't seen a jacket laid over a puddle in a minute.
Yeah. So that's one that we may have been mentioned to on a very surface level, but it wasn't until I got into my adult years and became an educator and began actually teaching this text that we really got into the nitty gritty of what she was talking about. And that's not just with her, that's with a lot of our Black history figures. Oftentimes when we're in our primary schools and even in our secondary schools, we get the secondary information, what other people have summarized about these figures, but we don't actually read or listen to what these people said themselves firsthand. As a matter of fact, one of my professors, I got my Howard sweatshirt on. One of my professors at Howard University, African American Studies professor, he was even speaking about this with Martin Luther King. Even though Martin Luther King is one of those figures that is always picked every year for Black History Month, very few people have actually read what he wrote firsthand, and not just the I Have a Dream speech, but actually read his books. And if you looked at what he said in those books, you would be like, whew, especially in the later part of his life. I mean, even in this earlier part, he says some things that would probably have some people taken aback.
Yeah. He was a little more fiery than people think.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I came across a paper that he wrote in the theological seminary that was deep.
See, yes, definitely.
But if you all would like some recommendations on more of these unsung heroes, I have a couple of books. I mean, I'm not bringing one of those for my offering, but I do have some others that touch on some of these unsung heroes in my library. I have one on the shelf. I have a couple on the shelf, and maybe one or two in my classroom. But yeah, I just wanted to add that part in, just as a general statement about some of these figures that we highlight during this month.
Right, absolutely, and I thank you for adding that, because again, you don't learn a lot about them, and I'll you know what, I have to, I'm going to give a little grace to the education system, right? Not which they teach children, and some of those concepts stories and things are hard for adults to digest. So to decide what to give to the youth, I'm sure is a task.
It is.
You know, I will say this. I remember being traumatized in school.
Huh.
And I talked about this before in some of our other talks on different platforms. You know, they gave us permission slips to bring home to watch Roots in school. And I had never seen anything like that before in my life, nor had I heard tell about anything like this in my life. And I was devastated.
Wow.
I was devastated. So I can only imagine when creating a curriculum for the youth to really give them the true story, or even to begin to help to unfold the true story of all that really has happened in our history as a people in this landmass. It must be a truly difficult task. And so I always say our teachers, our educators don't ever get respected or paid enough, or anything, to put up with some of the things that they do, or to do some of the things that they do. They are truly heroes. So shout out to all of our educators. We appreciate you. Please don't give up on our children. Please don't give up on our children, and don't give up on us. You know, one of the things that I find that I would like to see more is when they do some of these, when they do programs for these kind of, you know, nights, like, you know, Black History Month and Women's History Month and all that thing. I would love to see more parents taking part in the presentations, or listening to some of these lectures, or helping to present some of this information to the children. So that's just, you know, a little secret wish of mine. I'm gonna show this picture again because I don't know if anybody has figured out who that is, but I want us to keep him in mind because we will talk about him in the end. So back to the Black West. So I love cowboys. I love horses. I love all those things like that. And I love Arizona. And again, when we were taught about African Americans and Africans, we would, when I really sat back and thought about what they kind of taught us, it was like they had us all in one space. Like it was only Black people here. You know what I mean? Like all the rest, all the Go West young men, all of that was not for us. That was for somebody else. So we were made to think. So when I found images like this one, here we go.
Okay, let me. All right, there we go.
All right. So when I find images like that, and here's a picture of they say what it with they actually had her in a movie, well, portrayed her in the movie Stagecoach Mary. This is her true image.
Okay.
And this one is Arthur L. Walker, cowboy. And you know, and I just want to show this ad here. Arizona Joe.
All right.
Okay. So, you know, and there were a lot of former slaves and freemen who, you know, went out west and made a true way for themselves, you know, in many places all the way across the map. And it's unfortunate that we don't hear about that unless we go searching for it, or unless you're from that area. That's one thing that I will say, is that sometimes what you'll find is that they'll only teach you about the things in your area. Like we learned about the Weequay Indians because we were there by Weequay Park, and we had the Weequay section and the Weequay High School and all. So I mean, to not teach us about it would be, you know, we'd be like, well, who are these people? You know what I mean? So I want to go here and talk about excellence. All right, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm sorry I'm not better at showing these pictures, y'all, but you know,
It's all good. We
I'm
see it.
working with what I got going on here.
No, we see
This beautiful woman that I shared with you right here, I would have loved to hear a story like this when I was young. And again, this is just talking about how, you know, we cover the same people every year, and there's so many for us to be able to talk about and discover. So this portion of the book is called The Interview with Young Sculptress. It says, one of the most interesting individuals I met at the reception was Edmonia Lewis, a colored girl about 20 years of age who is devoting herself to sculpture. I told her I judged her by her complexion and thought that there might be what was called white blood in her veins. She quickly replied, no, I have not a single drop of what is called white blood in my veins. My father was a full blooded Negro and my mother was a full blooded Chippewa. And he said, have you lived with the Chippewas? And she said, yes. When my mother was dying, she wanted me to promise that I would live 3 years with her people, and I did. And he asked, what did you do while you were there? And she said, I did as my mother's people did. I made baskets, I embroidered moccasins, and I went into the cities with my mother's people to sell them. But surely I've said you have some other education than you received among your mother's people, for your language indicates it. And she said, I have a brother who went to California and dug gold. And when it had been 3 years with my mother's people, he came to me and said, Edmonia, I don't want you to stay here always. I want you to have some education. So he placed me in a school in Oberlin, and I stayed there for 2 years, and he brought me to Boston, and that's the best place for me to learn to be a sculptor. And so she went on to be a famous sculptor.
Okay, let me pull it back up. There we go.
There we go. So Edmonia Lewis, y'all, somebody else for us to take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
And and again, now I don't know how many art history people we have watching, but I know that I studied some art in school, you know, just as an elective, nothing serious. That's why I say any art students, they would probably have a deeper look into art than we would. But I mean, I've never heard of her. I'd never heard of her outside of this book. And I truly appreciate all mediums of art, and I'd never heard of her.
Wow.
Not once. Okay. Um I wanted to mention a couple more things and then I'll give you the floor, Nick. Um, so anybody who follows Mawulisatemple and many of the people that we rock with, Nick included, we all have the dream of going somewhere and building our own space, living in our own land, being with our own people, doing our own things. And you know, I don't know how anybody else was raised, but again, raised in, you know, New Jersey school systems, you know, you weren't shown that a lot. You weren't shown any place outside again of the South where anybody went and lived together as a family. Most times they made it look like living together as a family was a sign that you couldn't go out on your own and you couldn't make it on your own. You had to stay in these conditions, which is, you know, psychological warfare, you know what I'm saying, and a form of genocide, getting people to separate and divide themselves from each other where they can't be strong, because surely together we are stronger, right? But you know, in these last couple of in this last 2 decades, I've seen more people forge out and buy big pieces of land, build compounds and homes and businesses for themselves and their family, creating legacy and being able to bring that back to many of us, because many of us never had the opportunity to inherit any land or anything like that. So I don't know if we remember, what was it, a couple of years ago, Nick, when that family brought all that land down there. I believe it was in Georgia,
Mm-hmm.
and they were showing people how to do that. It was quite amazing, and it felt like, outside of the stories we hear about things like Rosewood and Black Wall Street, it was sounded like something that was amazing that had never taken place before. Well,
Mm.
in this book I found a man called George Washington.
Mm.
And in 1817, George Washington was born in Virginia to a slave father and a white mother. His mother gave him into adoption to a white family who moved to the frontier settlements, first in Ohio and then in northern Missouri. By the time he was a teenager, he was an expert marksman with a rifle or a revolver. He also picked up skills as a miller, distiller, tanner, cook, weaver, and spinner. Don't we be doing all the jobs? We be having like 13 jobs all the time. He said he had learned to read, to write, and do arithmetics. 6 feet tall and weighing almost 200 pounds, he was known locally for his strength. The Missouri legislature granted him almost all of his rights as a citizen. And it says in 1850, he and his foster parents left the state in a train of 15 wagons that took 4 months to reach the Oregon Territory as an independent homesteader on 640-acre plot. Can you imagine?
That's a
Can
lot of
you
land.
imagine
That is a lot of land.
for a 640-acre plot purchased for him by his foster father? He grew cereal and vegetable crops. He did not marry until after he had repaid his foster parents and after they died. When he was 50, he wedded an attractive Negro woman named Mary Jane Kunis. Together, the two prospered, and in 1872, when the Northern Pacific Railroad decided to build across his land, he decided to establish a town,
Mm.
and he called it Centerville, halfway between the Columbia River and the Puget Sound. That is right, Puget Sound, Puget, Puget Sound. It says to ensure the town's growth, he sold lots. Peep this now. Think about
Mm-hmm.
it. 640 acres.
Mm-hmm.
To ensure that the town that he wanted to build would grow, he sold lots for $5.
Mm.
And it says if the buyers would agree to build the house worth at least $100 on the land. And then he donated the money to churches, a cemetery, and to aid the less fortunate townspeople. In 1890, 2 years after his first wife died, he remarried, and Washington in his mid-70s had a son.
In his mid-70s.
In his mid-70s. And so, mind you, 3 years later, in the Panic of 1893, it says that his generosity was tested. Now, you have to remember, this is a man who had 640 acres, was wise enough to see that the railroad was coming through his land. So he started building, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in 1893, when they had this big, big problem with trying to keep people fed and everything else, it says that his wagons brought rice, flour, sugar, meat, and lard from as far away as Portland to the starving town, and he provided jobs, and noted by recent authority, he saved the town. He built this town, and when it began to decline, he single-handedly saved it.
Wow.
By providing everybody resources until they could get back up off their backs. So this is that beloved brother.
Okay, let me put it up on the big screen.
Can we see him?
All right, there it go. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we froze up. All right. Yeah, it froze up, but we'll be right back momentarily. We'll be right back. Man, that was powerful. It's probably why it froze up, because that was probably one of the most powerful stories we've heard and examples we've seen so far from this offering. You know, we can create, but when it comes to having that power, that real power, yeah. But Roo is back.
I'm back. Listen, you know what? I tell you, I said, you know, we I tell you, that's all I'm gonna say is. But I was showing you a picture of the brother here, so let me go back to that for anybody that didn't get a chance to see it.
Yep, I'll put it back up on the big screen.
So they ended up changing the name of the town because they found later that the town, there was another one with that same name, so they named it Centralia. Centralia, Washington. Now again, have you ever heard of that place? Because I never have.
Nope.
I never heard of him. I never heard
Either.
about a black man who built the town and then saved 640 acres. Why don't we hear this story? Because it's too inspiring.
Yeah.
It's too inspiring. Yeah. And then when it started to fail, instead of him abandoning everybody and say, well, I'll protect me, he held everybody down.
Mm-hmm. Yes, he did.
Everybody.
Yes, he did.
So now I'm asking myself, we got a whole bunch of people with money.
Mm-hmm.
Our athletes alone make millions.
Mm-hmm.
Our superstars make millions. So why was this man able to take what he did when he did in 640 acres and make a difference? What difference could we be making right now, y'all? Like on some real. What difference could we be making right now?
That's right.
You know, and it goes on to talk about how they honored him and it says that in 1905 he was still in good health and died from an accident where his horse threw him from his buggy. He ain't died from nothing, you know. And like in nothing that would, you know, like harmful that would kill him, you know, like you know, disease or illness or anything like that. He just an accident thrown from his buggy. And it says the mayor proclaimed the day of mourning, and Centralia had its biggest funeral. It was entirely fitting that the church that he donated to, on the ground that he donated, that he was laid to rest in the cemetery that he donated to the town. And the city park still bears his name of this sturdy compassion. It says still bears the name of this sturdy and compassionate Black man whose skilled hands and resourceful mind helped to build the West. Those who knew him, and many do not, all still benefited. But I love that they put the church that he helped build on the land that he gave them, with a cemetery that he gave them. Like, you see what I'm saying? He did all that. And so when he left here, he had a legacy. Everything they stood on was because of him. One man and his generosity and compassion. Do we not have anyone that generous and compassionate today? Not one of these millionaires or these billionaires? Not one? Because I'm sure he wasn't a millionaire or a billionaire. He came from a very modest family. Even his foster family. So we don't have no excuses, y'all. I'm just, I don't want to get on my bandwagon because I almost did right there for a second. I almost did. I felt myself.
Yeah. I felt the building up too.
Well, you know what? It's gonna build up a little bit more, and then I'm gonna be done. All right. So here, and this is, again, remember I said I like this book because it was pictorial. So this is a advertisement, and you know, if anybody's interested in some of these, I can give Nick pictures of it and he can share these documents, because I know you can't see it with my poor presentation here, but these are just different ads about homesteaders. So this one is about a real estate association that they were starting. This was the very first one. It was real estate number one. Number one. This is our first one. We on it, you know. It says see what colored citizens are doing for their elevation. What? What?
For their elevation.
It says Edgefield Real Estate Association number one. You know, and it goes on, it tells you about its members or whatever, but I want to go back over here to this release and share this with you. It says, to the colored citizens of the United States, and this is a Nicodemus Graham Company, Kansas, July 2nd, 1877, right? And then it's this is a statement from the Nicodemus Town Company in Graham County. It says they are now in possession of the lands in the town site of Nicodemus, which is beautifully located in the northwest quarter and section of town in Graham County, Kansas, in the Great Solomon Valley, 240 miles west of Topeka, and proud to say that it's the finest country we ever saw. And it goes on to just describe the town a little bit or whatever. But what I want to bring your attention to, it says what they secured. It says, not quite 90 days ago, we secured our charter for locating on the town site of Nicodemus. When we then became the organized body, we did so with only $3 in the treasury and 12 members. But under the careful management of our officers, we have now nearly 300 good and reliable members, with several members permanently located on their claims, with plenty of provisions for the colony. While we are daily receiving letters from all parts of the country from parties desiring to locate into the Great Solomon Valley of West Kansas, we continue to address and accept people into our general area. So it talks about them being able to, you know, bring more people in from all over. And then it has a little piece here. It says Nicodemus was a slave of African birth, and he was bought for a bag of gold. He was reckoned a part of the salt of the earth, but died years ago. Nicodemus was a prophet, or at least as wise, for he told of battles to come, how we trembled with fear when he rolled up his eyes, and we heeded the shake of his thumb. So this was a song that they would sing in honor of this organization, this coming together and purchasing of this space where they built this colony. So again, there's another example of people getting together with nothing and making something. $3 and 12 people. Not even $1 for every person. How about that?
Wow.
But again, how many millions our people got right now? How much money we spend on Black and Miles and sneakers?
I think the
Wait a minute, did I say that out loud?
Yeah, I was you did, but that's okay. That's okay. Now I think the spending power, I think the collective spending power is somewhere up in the 1 trillion area, something like that.
It's amazing to me. I'm gonna tell you like this. I've never seen $1 million in one place at one time, but I plan on it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I know that um some of our ancestors took so little and did so much, and it was more about them being organized. And I think that's the part that I really want to close with this book. What I really see in this book and what I really gathered from this book in comparison to what I learned in school about slavery and Black people and everything in the East is that they didn't really allow us to see what true organization can do. Because one of the things you clearly see here is that people weren't afraid to one, venture out, and two, take a chance and a gamble on themselves. There's a lot of fear on the East Coast, and that's why I think that even now what we see in some of the violence and in some of the mindset and things that we have, I'm sure it could be examined to say that we feel this defensiveness and this need to be aggressive because of the DNA of our ancestors that has shown us through time that this is what you need to survive. What do they say? If we can make it here, we can make it anywhere, right? Mm-hmm. And that's true indeed. And I think if they would have allowed people with the mindset like ours to see the organization of places like this, we would have a different landscape. You know what I mean? Even now, if I'll tell you like this: if you get 6 folks from no, I won't even go that far. If you get like 5 people from Philly, 5 people from Newark, and 5 people from New York, you can't tell me they can't raise an empire. Throw a couple of Baltimore, Maryland people in there and a couple of them Virginia folks, and I'm going to let you know you'll have something going. Why? Because these are some of the most industrious, inventive, resourceful young people I've ever seen. I grew up in these neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So I know that I've seen us in the resources we can pull together and what we can do with a little. So, the Black West, it was a great surprise to me. I learned a lot of things that I had not been taught in school, and it was like I said, it was shocking, it was sad, but it felt good to know that we had more of a narrative than the one that was being sold to us every year during Black History Month and during the times when they did allow us to talk about Black history. They always made it seem like it was it should have been, we should have been so grateful just to be there. And it's like, no, I see nothing but us there. So you're going to have to do better. So I asked, did anybody know who this was? Did we have any answers down in there, Nick?
Well, you do remember that what we're doing for this broadcast is a little bit different from our usual.
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. But I'll just go ahead and I'll let people, go take a look afterwards, because I'm going to give you this picture so you can put it up with our promo. And this is Nat Love, better known as Deadwood Dick. It says Nat Love was born in Tennessee as a slave in a cabin in 1854. He was one of many Southern blacks who found their opportunities crushed by slavery and the continuation of white supremacy that followed the Civil War. Among the destitute conditions in his part of the state that caused Love at age 15 to head to the West was the lack of schools for black children. In 1869, Nat Love took leave of his family and struck out for Kansas. It was the beginning of what he would later characterize with rare understatement as an unusually adventurous life. And so it just goes on to talk about his life in the West, and yeah.
Yep. Yep, and that's an iconic photo. So
yes, it is.
If you didn't know his name, you probably, good chance you might have seen that photo before. I know.
Yes,
I know I've seen it quite a few times.
Absolutely. And so it's a story worth reading. And I tell people like this, a lot of times we do see imagery and really don't have anything but the story that was told to us. Like I said, this book is full of imagery, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted it, was because I wanted to make sure to have a variety of images to show for our people of unsung heroes all around us. And we have some great ancestors, and we really need to give thanks for all the things that they've done to pave the way for us. And we can only hope that one day, when our descendants are talking about us, they'll be able to say we did great things on their behalf for them to be able to be where they are. So that is my offering for this week. Again, the Black West, William Loren, Katz.
All right, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Yes, that's a beautiful offering right there.
Absolutely. I really, it's one of those things where you find little gems. Like I said, this came from the Weekway Library on Osborne Terrace. Shout out to them. I don't know if they even still there, but we used to spend a lot of time in there. And whenever they had damaged books and they put them on sale, they would all put them to the side for me because they knew I was on my way.
Yeah, they knew you coming.
And they knew I was coming. I was one of the only homeschoolers in our area. So they really helped me out when they would have those little book sales. They would always put something to the side for me to be able to use in the classroom. And I was able to use this in our homeschool classroom, and I've kept it all these years. Like I said, it's a little bit loved, but that was why they sold it in the first place. So I appreciate being able to have this book in my collection. And while I'm presenting it as unread, I'll dub it as a reread all the time.
All right. Great. And those last couple of examples that you mentioned, they remind me of the offering I bought about a year ago. If you remember, the Collective Courage book, and the examples of all of the cooperative organizations that were set up throughout history and across the country, in which the people pooled their resources and they either built organizations or communities that provided services. So yep, that's a full cipher moment there with
Yes, I
this
like
offering.
that. Yes, absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I do remember that book, and that's definitely a great resource to even mention with this one.
Indeed, indeed. And I have another one too. It's not a it's not a book per se. It's more of a course pack that one of my professors put together. It was a course. I don't have it with me. That one's at my parents' house, but I have to show that one show that one to you as well. But it's a similar type of text, but it was a part of a course called, let me see if it was a long title too. So let me make sure I get it correct. I believe it was 20th century Black social and political thought. But that
Oh
course
wow.
pack, yeah, that course pack had examples of people in history during the 20th century, and they also had a 19th century course as well. But the 20th century course, highlighted examples of those, mutual aid organizations and those type of organizations that are highlighted in that collective courage book as well. So I have to pull that one out and see what's in there, because I haven't looked at that one in over a decade.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah.
wow. But
And
doesn't it feel great to be able to have those kind of books to go back to? You know what I mean?
mhm,
This
it
is
is.
this is why we do what we do.
Yep, yep,
So,
yep. And I'll say one more thing about those last two examples, especially that second to that last example about the brother who founded the town and all the jobs that he was doing.
mhm.
And I guess it's a question slash statement. But you mentioned that he did so many jobs and had so many skills, and that was a reflection of a lot of our ancestors during that time. And what I wonder is, was that out of necessity that they picked up so many skills and had so many jobs, or was it just out of choice, you know
Right,
and,
right.
and then I connect that to what you were saying about the fear, and how we have no excuse, and how we can recreate some of these organizations and structures in our contemporary time. And I think it's also the fear that drives a lot of our people away from those skills and those type of jobs and vocations, because yes, we do have a lot of money collectively that we can invest, but we also need the work done too. The people to do the actual physical building. And and you notice within the past several decades, a lot of us have been you know guided in the direction towards I guess more so of the white collar kind of professions, rather than professions such as agriculture and other type of trades. And oftentimes we have to look outside of our community for the people to do the actual physical work in the building of it, because we're not going into those fields and learning those skills that we need. So and I definitely think a part of it is fear, like you mentioned. Yeah.
Absolutely. You made such a great point. And again, many of these things that we talk about can deserve a whole 2 hours, 3 hours of conversation just by themselves. But just to add on to what you were saying there, yes, the fear of it all. I mean, you know, if you show a great success, right? for example, I remember thinking to myself, well, if we had, now mind you, this was young Jamila, it was like, if we had Black Wall Street before, why we just don't build it again? If we had Black Rosewood before, why we just don't build it again? Right? So I remember thinking that, and as I got older and started to study more and be around more forward thinking people, right? I would hear them talking about, let's get together, let's do it, whatever. But there was always this underlying fear. Well, what if they come and destroy it? What if they come and destroy it? What if they come? What if they won't let us have it? But history would dictate every time you have something, somebody come tear it up. So even if there's not a surface fear, there's a subconscious fear that when I make it, they're gonna come tear down all my hard work.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And so that's the one thing I want to say about that. And the other part I want to talk about was what you said about the skill building, and if he had learned those skills out of necessity or just, interest. Um, I know just in my family, a lot of the skills they learned because we were taught the more things you know, the more valuable you make yourself, and the more the more value you bring to the table. So being able to do a myriad of things was important because you made yourself, irreplaceable. So it was like, okay, you can get rid of me, but who's gonna do this, and this? And I think we're seeing a little bit of that in our country right now because, I recently saw a post where there was a lot of construction going on at one time. And because of some of the things that's going on right now in the world, no construction was taking place. And so I'm just like, who's gonna do it? Like you said,
Right.
we wanna build on this land, we wanna farm, we wanna do all this stuff, but we don't realize how much hard work it takes. Be it in the ag, field now, myself for the past couple of years, being very active in the field itself as a whole. Been to farms everywhere, watching, some of the different things, old school techniques, new things that they're doing to grow food and, have sustainability. And what I'll say is that our people have no idea a lot of times the hard work that goes into farming, into understanding the soil, understanding the seasons, understanding what crops grow together. They people really don't realize that this takes time to learn. These things take time to learn, knowing how to raise a proper structure. You know what I'm saying? So yes, I do see us, doing all of these things. But again, if we don't keep those basic skills, being taught, being shared over and over again, we won't have anybody to do anything, and we'll be sitting around dependent upon somebody else in another way. And I just want to follow up and say that if and this is just my opinion about this part, um if we, I think, reminded ourselves and our youth of not only how important it is to have some of these skills, but how much fun it is to be creative, architecture is one of my favorite things. I love to see the intricacies of buildings because it lets you see the intricacies of somebody's mind, their vision. You know what I'm saying? Um, Understanding plumbing and heating. I think about how, you got these floors with these self-warming tiles, and how they used to do that in ancient times and how they do it now. And it's so many things that are exciting about these fields, but I think we just really need to um to display them more and expose the people to them a little bit more, and they'll see that not only are they beneficial to us, they're opportunity to really stretch and grow and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, true indeed, true indeed. And yeah, that work, and we hear, the idealistic, mantras of, yeah, let's buy some land and build on it, or you see those internet memes. All of this has become like internet memes too. Like, I'd rather, instead of partying or buying designer, I'd rather buy some land and build on it. Which is great. But it's, are you going to build on it? Do you know how to build? Do you know how to farm? And on the flip side, even on both sides of my family, I've heard, over the years that, because they, both sides of the family have roots in rural areas, South Carolina and Tennessee. And, people are getting up in age and they already have the land, but, they're too up in age to tend to the land. And, the younger generations have no interest in tending to the land, or being away from, civilization, quote unquote, because of, a lot of these places, they're far away from, stores and just
Entertainment and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, things like that. Yeah, all of those things. So, people are talking about it, but how many people are really going to be about it?
Right.
when they
It's
talk
not
about it?
easy.
Hmm.
If I had to suggest anything, I think what gave me a reality check is I remember boy, I tell you, boy, when you young, you just be so gullible, you know. And I can't say that I'm not now. I have my moments, but I remember being a part of an organization, and we were talking about buying land, da da da. So, I was the one that go out and scout the land and see it, see what was the possibilities and everything. And it was like 28 acres. It was beautiful, and everything. And it was at such a steal of a cost. It was like, oh, we can do this. But what we didn't know. So if I was to suggest something to somebody, find a piece of land, right? Do this as an exercise. Find a piece of land, really research it, and find out how much it would cost and what it would take to be able to build on it. Because you got to find out, is it in a flood zone? Can you
Yep.
get water in? Can you get
Yep.
electricity in? Can you get
Exactly.
satellite? Can
Yep.
will it slide down the mountain when you buy it? Will it sink into the ground? Will it blow away?
Hmm.
Like, it was so
All
much
of that.
stuff that you don't know. It's like, oh, I want to buy this land, and it's like, well, where you gonna live? You think you're just gonna bring the house and sit it down and everything inside of it is gonna be working? Well, I will say you can bring a house and sit it down, but you need power, water,
Yep.
if you so it's just like, many of these pieces of land, you gotta clear your own road.
Hmm.
People don't know that there's no, outlets in and out. You gotta clear, so you gotta take trees down, which requires permits and people
Hmm.
to come and do it. I know here in New York, I needed a tree taken down, and they were talking upward towards $10,000 to take down one tree. So if you buy a piece of land and it's beautiful with all these trees, guess what you gotta do? You gotta bring all them trees down.
Hmm.
You gotta
Yep.
have,
You want to build on it.
excavation cost alone can send you running.
Yeah.
So, we have these fantasies about buying land and growing food and all this stuff like this. I told people, we gave one agricultural workshop, and we were talking about how long do you think, we asked the audience, how long do you think it takes to have a proper crop that you can actually live on?
Huh.
You understand what I'm saying? So if you go buy your land tomorrow and you plant some seeds, when you think you're gonna eat? Yeah, because it ain't gonna be soon.
Yeah, it ain't gonna be tomorrow. Definitely ain't gonna be tomorrow.
Ain't gonna be tomorrow. This is not Jack and the Beanstalk. You know what I mean? This is not the magic beans. So I mean, just the reality of that alone makes people afraid that they're not gonna be able to do it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you know, it really is unfortunate that we're not taught about this stuff earlier. I will always go back to that. You know, I'm gonna always go back to education, because that's what it is. It's like we have to know in order to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and this is the funny part. I can bet you a dime to a dollar, there's not one person that you can ask or that's watching today, did they not do the plant in the cup in school? All of us did the plant in the cup. Everybody had the plant in the cup at some point, because once they started studying Arbor Day in school, that was another thing. And then Earth Day and all this stuff, they started really getting back into making children do the little agriculture project. You do that at some point. So my thing is, if we can get the children to do that, can't we expand that out a little bit more and show them, you know, look, this is what sustainability is. And I think it is happening now. A little bit more than it was before. But now you have a group of children who want nothing to do with it, because they just feel like they can go on YouTube and make a bunch of money, which they can.
Yeah. I mean,
they go on the TikToks, they go on the Instagrams, they do, and they make their money. And so why should they go out there and turn some dirt over, or go out there and drive a tractor? They ain't interested in all of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm part of that. I'm part of that too. I mean, I'm a little bit older. You know, I'm not a child. I'm older than a child, but you know, I can't even say my generation was the beginning of that. You know, that was I'm definitely in the middle of it. You know, like I said, you know, especially growing up in the Northeast. I mean, even my cousins that live in the South, you know, they ain't want anything to do with that. You learning agriculture and farming and all of that.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, I will say this is the elders in my family, the elders that were above me, I think was the last generation to inherit anything, and they sold it all.
Yeah.
You know, they sold it all because they didn't want to be bothered with it, you know. And I think that's another difference I saw with the Northeast, you know, education about slavery and building versus the West, was it's still a lot of inheritance that goes on there. Even now, they weren't getting rid of their land like that. If now lands were snatched, lands were taken, lands were stolen, but the willingly giving it up, like some of these people do, as soon as grandma in the ground, they fighting about selling their portion, you know, and then they just lose it. You know, they just lose it, and unfortunately that's the reality. And I want us to really get back to ownership and legacy and inheritance, because that's one of the things that's going to save us.
And we can, and it doesn't even have to start with the land. We just need to start with grandma's house. Like, the house is already there. The house is already built. It's just already built. You know, it's you know, everything is close by, but we still selling the house. I'm like, even if you don't want to live in the house, at least rent it out, get some income coming through it, you know, something. But we
That's
selling
a
the
great
house.
point. That is a great point, Nick. Exactly. If we could just keep grandma's house.
Yeah, we could just keep the house, like start with that. And then, think about if there's land, what we could do with the land. But we selling the house, and the house is already built.
And paid for.
And paid for.
Built and paid for. That's, what I will say that is that, I only have a few family members left. And that always made me sad to say that in some ways that, that because there's so a few of us that I'm actually becoming an elder just by default. But one of my cousins and I think that was where we had a fallout because they sold something that, had been in our family for some time, and it was just like we could have just kept that, man. Like, you didn't have to do nothing with that. You could have just left it alone if you didn't want it, but because it was left to them, they felt it was their need, their right to do whatever, and it was, but then we can't be crying about legacy later either.
Yeah, right,
we can't be crying about we don't have no collective family wealth, and you getting rid of the one or two things that we actually had. You know what I'm saying? So
yep, yeah, mutual hypocrisy. Yep.
It is, it really is. And like I said, a lot of it is fear, a lot of it is greed. We ain't really gonna talk about the greed part of it, but because that is a big part of it, but it is,
Yeah.
So yeah, that the Black West, y'all, that's it really it made me look at things different. When I think about history now, I always think about it a little bit deeper. Good. And think about some of the heroes that we have never heard of.
Indeed. Well,
let me sit back and relax now.
Okay. Yep. I'm not going to be long, but I'm going to be strong.
Woo, I know that's right.
All right. So my sweatshirt happens to be in alignment with my offering, and my offering actually wasn't driven by Black History Month per se. It was more so driven by me wanting to switch genres and bring a genre that I haven't brought to UnRead yet, because I've brought fiction, with novels. I brought poetry. I brought history, spirituality, self-help, but I have not brought. Oh, I've also brought guidebooks too, but I have not brought biographies yet. So yeah. So I decided to switch it up and bring a biography, and I will explain how the biography connects or relates to my alma mater here. So this is a UnRead. This is a book that I read about 15 years ago. I only read it once. So it's pretty much like me looking at it for the first time. Of course, I had a couple of other books that I offered on UnRead that are like that I might have read only once and haven't looked at in a very long time. This one is a very, very long time. So this is a book that I read my freshman year of college as a part of my orientation class. Okay. And my offering, this book is, and I'll put myself on the big screen. So my offering for this episode is Succeeding Against the Odds, the autobiography of a great businessman by John H. Johnson with Lerone Bennett Jr. Okay. All right. And this was the required reading for my freshman orientation class, because my school was actually named after this gentleman, and I'll tell you who he is if you're not familiar in just a moment. Now, when I say my school, I have to provide a distinction between colleges and universities. If you're not already familiar, some people might not be familiar because you might be thinking his name is Johnson. You have Howard on your sweatshirt. That's not the same name. So I attended Howard University, and the difference between universities and colleges are that colleges usually are made up of one school, while universities are made up of a bunch of smaller schools within the larger university. So at Howard, there was a communication school, a business school, arts and sciences, dental school, medical school, divinity school, education school. I think that's all of them. There might be maybe one or two other ones that I'm missing. I attended the communication school, and the communication school is named after this gentleman. It's no longer named after him. At the time, there was the John H. Johnson School of Communications. I majored in broadcast journalism. Now it is the Kathy Hughes School of Communications because I believe she surpassed Mr. Johnson's donation to the communication school. So whenever you whoever donates the most money gets the building named after them. So up until the time after I graduated, when Kathy Hughes gave a higher donation, it was named after John H. Johnson. So Kathy Hughes is the founder of Radio One, TV One. You might have listened to her radio stations and her syndicated radio stations and TV channels. But John H. Johnson, he is the founder of a magazine series, a couple of magazine series, and which you're probably familiar with. If you're not familiar with him, you definitely heard of these magazines. Now, you may not have heard of the first magazine he published, which was called the Negro Digest, but I'm sure you have heard of, unless you're a youth, Generation X or Gen Z or whatever, and maybe may not have heard of these magazines, but I know Roo has heard of these magazines, and a lot of my peers have heard of these magazines, but you all are familiar with Jet Magazine and Ebony Magazine.
Absolutely.
So John H. Johnson is the founder of Negro Digest, Jet Magazine, and Ebony Magazine, the publisher of those famous magazines. So this was, like I mentioned, this was a part of required reading for our freshman orientation class. It is a biography of his life and his journey to becoming a millionaire magazine publisher. Now, since I haven't read this book in so long, I won't be able to go into a lot of detail, but what I will share would be the origin story that really struck me and stood out to me, and it really resonated with me and stayed with me after all of these years. But before that, I'll just give some background information on the book itself. It was published. First publication was in 1989, and this edition is actually the 50th anniversary edition of this book, which was probably 1992. It was published again in 1992. So it has, of course, it has the foreword, but it also has the 50th anniversary statement in it. And as I mentioned, it covers his entire life. So before he started the magazines, up until the end of his life. Now, the part that really stood out to me that I remembered 15 years later was when he first started the Negro Digest in 1942. Yeah, November 1st, 1942. So he started the Negro Digest November 1st, 1942. Ebony Magazine, November 1st, 1945. And Jet Magazine, November 1st, 1951. Now, what stood out to me about this story was he started the Negro Digest by taking out a $500 loan against his mother's furniture. So I'm gonna go ahead. I found that page, so I'm gonna go ahead and share that. That'll be one of the parts that I'll share. I'll also share some of the images in here and some of the excerpts from the magazine. So this comes from chapter 14, and chapter 14 is called Negro Digest: How I Made Millions with a $500 Loan. Okay, so Mr. Johnson, he went to the Citizens Loan Corporation to get a loan to start this magazine, and he started it on a pre-subscription basis where people paid their money to pre-subscribe. So when he went to the Citizens Loan Corporation, they told him that he needed collateral, and he said they offered to give him a loan, but he says, you need to have collateral, and he's like, no, what's that? What do you mean by collateral? And then the person at the loan corporation told him, a house that you can mortgage, or new furniture, or some tangible asset that you can pledge as a guarantee that you'll repay the loan. Now I'll go ahead and read the rest of this paragraph. He said, I didn't have a house to mortgage, but my mother had managed, with my help, to buy some new furniture. I asked her to let me use it as collateral for a $500 loan. For the first time in all the years I'd known her, she frowned and balked. It had taken her a long time to pay for the furniture. She was proud of it, and she didn't intend to lose it. I pleaded, and she said, I'll just have to consult the Lord about this. It's not a decision I can make by myself.
Amen to that.
Every day for almost a week, I'd come home and check with my mother to see if the Lord had said anything. And she said, no, I'm still praying. I said, maybe I better pray with you.
I know that's right.
For 3 or 4 days, we prayed together and cried together. Finally, she said, I think the Lord wants me to do it. She gave me the paid up document, and I took it to the guy at the loan company, and he issued a check for $500.
Wow.
You know how the cliche, you know the cliche, and the rest is history.
And the rest is history. Wow. What a great story.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
what a great origin story. That is such a great story. He said, did the Lord tell you yet?
Yeah.
Said, I'll pray with you. Let me double down with you.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yep. So this book is broken up into 5 sections for a total of 47 chapters. It is a total of 350 pages, and I'll share another part that I'll share. Well, actually, let me talk about that story and why that resonated with me. It's like you said, amazing origin story, and it really resonated with me because it was a testament of faith. They really took a leap of faith there. Nothing is guaranteed, but they stepped out on faith, and look at the result. And it goes back to what we were talking about. If you really have a dream, you want to make something happen, there's a way. There's a will, there's a way. And it served, in coming into college, it served as an inspiration for those of us going into the media and really reemphasize the importance of, ownership, owning your platform and your medium, owning the message, having agency over the images that you portray. And if you remember Ebony and Jet magazine, those were those were some classy magazines. They weren't some trashy ratchet magazines. They showed us in our best
Excellent.
images. Yeah, excellence. Exactly. They showed us in our excellence. And Jet magazine with the Jet beauties, it totally challenged the traditional notions of beauty, the traditional European notions of beauty, in a classy way too. At that, not in the ways that we see in today's day and age.
Not at all.
So it was very much so an inspiration in that sense. Now the reason why John H. Johnson founded and published the Negro Digest, the very origin, he served as the managing editor. So he answers the question of why he published this magazine by having an image of the opening editorial from the first issue of the Negro Digest. So I'll go ahead and read that, and then I will share some of the pictures that are in here, detailing many of the places and significant moments in John H. Johnson's life and all of the people that he met. So introducing, Negro Digest is published in response to a demand for a magazine to summarize and condense the leading articles and comment on the Negro now current in the press of the nation in ever-increasing volume. The impact of the war and attendant discussion of what we are fighting for has focused new attention on the status of the Negro in America. There was widespread interest in what the Negro thinks of the war, democracy in the South. In a single, easy-to-read issue, Negro Digest gives you a complete survey of current Negro life and thought. The editors read hundreds of magazines, newspapers, periodicals, books, and reports in order to bring you a choice selection of articles and features each month. Negro Digest is dedicated to the development of interracial understanding and the promotion of national unity. It stands unqualifiedly for the winning of the war and the integration of all citizens into the democratic process. And so that's the opening editorial, and then you have the address, Negro Digest, 3507 South Parkway in Chicago, Illinois. And I am enclosing, check this out, I am enclosing $3 for 12 issues of Negro Digest. And then it has a space for you to put your name, address, city, and state.
Yes.
25 cents for a single copy.
Now look at that. Look at now. What year again was that?
This was in 1940. That's in 1941 or 1942. But this was during the time of World War II. So 1942. Yeah.
So look at how now we are still trying to get people to do subscriptions.
Oh, yep. Yeah. Now it's all digital.
You know what I mean? But it's the same thing, getting that information out there, it is getting that information out there. I love that. I love it. It was a need. He saw it, he filled it, and put it all in one place, because again, everybody have access to the same information. So making it, putting it with, in one resource, was brilliant. And like you said, I remember we couldn't wait for the new jet to come out, so we could see the jet beauty, and one of the things that I really loved about that is that it was one of the first times where you heard like you said, where you saw Black beauty in a different kind of way, but there was a call for just regular women. Anybody could, everywhere, every advertisement shows you where you can submit your photo and your name to try to be the jet beauty of the week. Who would want to be that? Who wouldn't want to be the jet beauty? You know what I mean? It was amazing, and like you said, done so classy. It was amazing, and I really that's a fond memory for me, is those magazines. You got to know a lot, and they were great stories too.
Yeah, and those were the artifacts that I was referring to earlier that I should have brought with me. My parents still have some jet magazines from probably like the 80s or the 90s.
I'm jelly.
Yeah, and they were the big ones. They weren't the standard magazine size we have now. They were the big, the big magazine size.
Oh man, you know what? I remember the little jets. They was little.
Oh yeah, the jets were small. Yeah. There's the ebony magazines that they had, the big ebony magazines.
Yeah. Oh man, I haven't seen one of those in years. Wow.
Yep, they still got a couple of issues in the closet.
And let's point out too, in that is that that was one of the first, like when we would have our own magazines, is where some of our people would get their first opportunities to put their ads.
Yeah,
ads for products for us. So I mean that's very innovative, and that's something I would look at like, wow, he was back in the 40s giving us a place, to sell our wares and to share our talents and our gifts and things like that. So that, I mean, definitely a pioneer.
Indeed. Yep, absolutely. And yep, he has several pictures detailing the various eras and stages in his life. He has an illustration of, I put myself on the expanded screen so we can see.
Thank you.
So he has the layout of his neighborhood growing up in Arkansas.
Wow.
Childhood neighborhood. Then he has, his pictures with some of his, well, that's his mother up here, who the book is actually dedicated to, because without her, there probably would be no Negro Digest, Jet, or Ebony magazine.
That's right. Without that initial investment.
Yep, and some of his publishing mentors there.
Okay.
Yep, his wedding picture up there at the top.
Very nice.
This one on the bottom is the first office of Johnson Publishing Company. Yep, in the Liberty Life. Yep, Supreme Life Building.
That's beautiful.
Yep, his first child up here.
Okay.
Turn it this way.
Yeah, I see it. Okay.
Yep, celebrating the 50th anniversary of National Urban League with Governor Rockefeller. Yep, that's this one right here. Then we have the 20th anniversary celebration of Ebony magazine down here.
Wow.
Yep.
Who is that on the front? Is that Cab Calloway?
On the front
of the Ebony.
Let me see. Well, no, this isn't the magazine cover. This is him speaking at the Waldorf Astoria.
Okay, that's him. Okay, I thought it was a band behind them. Okay.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I loved is you got to see a lot of old. They would put old pictures and new pictures in there. You always and I think that's so interesting that we both brought pictorial type
Right.
images. You know what I mean? Something,
Indeed.
some pictures. And that does make a difference too.
It does. It does.
Being able to add an image to the words.
It does. And then here he's with the president. So on the top, he's with President Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy, with Mrs. Lyndon B. Johnson and Ethel Kennedy at the top. And then in the middle, he's there with President Johnson posing with a copy of Jet magazine. And President Nixon down there at the bottom.
Tricky Dicky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, more presidents. Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, and Ronald Reagan on this side, or this side actually. And then on this side, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
Oh,
Mrs. George Bush, National Advisory Board meeting at the First Commercial Bank on this side.
Very nice. Yeah. Oh, he rubbed some elbows.
Yeah, definitely.
But you could imagine that being in communications and sharing stories, you have access to a lot of that world. You have to in order to be able to report on it,
Yep, indeed. Ghana Independence Celebration with Prime Minister Kwame Nkrumah. Yep, right there where my finger is.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see who else we see in here. It's on the page there. See Henry Ford II. We got Oprah Winfrey and Coretta Scott King.
Wow. Not the Oprah.
Yeah.
Shout out to the fellow Aquarian. Just had a birthday looking fabulous. She turned 71. Gorgeous.
Yep. Bill Cosby down here.
Okay.
Jesse Jackson.
Oh, wow.
He received the NAACP Spingarn Award in 1966. So that picture is up here.
Okay.
Yeah. Magazine Publisher of the Year by the Magazine Publishers Association in 1972. Inducted into the Black Press Hall of Fame in 1987.
All right.
Yeah.
So you talking at that point like 40 years in the game.
Yeah.
If there was the 80s when he finally got inducted, that's like 40 years in, right?
Yeah, just about. Yep, in 19. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say from 40 something to 80 something is, that's impressive.
Yeah, it is. And then this picture in the middle, he returned home to Arkansas, to his birthplace, the first time in 53 years. This was in 1986.
Wow.
Yeah. Where it all started.
Wow. Praying right there, waiting for the Lord to say yes.
That's right.
Wow. That had to be something.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yep. So that was my offering.
Wow. Now, I wonder, does it make mention in that book, because it is a little bit of an older book, but I know that those magazines are kind of no longer existing, but is his family still in journalism? Are they a part of any magazines that we would know of today?
That's a good question. Yeah, that would be something that we would have to look into and see.
I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big magazine person. Like, I do specialty magazines like quilting and quilting and boxing and
same.
but I was wondering, are there many Black magazines right now that we can speak of that they possibly could be involved? I don't even know what magazines we have now.
Yeah, yeah, and then we had to like confirm that they're whether or not they're Black owned. You know, we have
Yeah.
magazines that are targeted towards Black people, but whether they're actually owned and operated by Black people,
Yeah.
that's a that's another
You
another
know,
question. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I remember when BET was sold, that was a big thing, So I know that you don't always get, what you think you're getting sometimes. So I'd be interested to know though, about his legacy with his family and if anyone in his family picked up, in that area, picked up, journalism or, writing or anything.
Mhm.
Because I mean he definitely has a rich history,
Please,
so and
absolutely.
like you just mentioned in those few pictures, he was in some very different circles than many people are, and at a different in a very early time when
Right.
it was still very difficult.
Mhm.
You figured the 40s, you ask yourself what was going on with our people at that time, in terms of, how much were they being accepted? Where were we able to go? Where were we not able to go? So him just getting some of these stories
Right.
probably was a story in itself.
Right, right. Yep, indeed, indeed. And a lot of these pictures or a lot of these meetings were happening either at the height or towards the tail end of the civil rights era as well, in the 1960s, late 1960s, early 70s.
Right, and that's what I was thinking. He was writing quite a time before then, because even in, dealing, saying into the 60s, he started back in the 40s.
Right.
So
Hmm.
again, even in that short time, I'm sure it was things he was able to cover or do that he wasn't able to do in the beginning. So that definitely is some dedication to, to the craft.
Indeed, indeed. Oh, and I also have to say, just in case anyone's in the audience is wondering, this is no relation. He's not related to Bob Johnson, because
Right.
I thought about that too. I'm like they both
Right.
have the same last name.
You know,
Bob Johnson, the founder of BET. So no
right,
relation.
right. That's
Yeah, no
why I
relation.
asked. Yeah, that's why I asked, because
Yeah.
I thought about that. But and that's actually something I mentioned with this book, was that um when you think about last names, you hear things like Johnson's, Jones, all these things like this. In this book, it was so many last names that I had never kind of, would associate with our people, but
Mm,
they are. And it was very interesting, because now when you think about broadening your scope of looking for your people, you have this whole other slew of folks that you would have never considered because of what their names are. But we
right.
remember that our families, they weren't divided kindly, like, oh yeah, you guys go over here and all stick together. I mean, you had people just being put wherever. So you can be, on the East Coast once 1 minute and be in California the next with a whole new name, if
Hmm.
you will. So that's, it's just interesting, and like you said, when you mentioned the Johnson, I thought about that. Was that maybe part of his legacy, part of his family? But you did let us know that it's not. So that's interesting.
Hmm.
And the fact that and then the fact that he sold that company and not necessarily to, you know, uh folks that look like us. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yep. And this is and just to clarify, when the 50th anniversary, it's the 50th anniversary of Johnson Publishing Company. That's what this book is commemorating. Not the 50th anniversary of the publishing of this book.
Right.
Got to clarify that. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Well,
Yep.
that's
And it
so
was
awesome.
published. I'm just looking at it now. It was published by Amistad Press. you know, out of New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So just want to mention that also. Yeah.
That is really interesting. Really interesting. And again, a book I had never heard of. So I love that. I love when you bring some of the different genres that you do, because again, if you're not introduced to these things in specialty places, these are not things that you would commonly come across. Like you said, this was a required reading for your particular school at Howard. So
Mm-hmm.
it was for
Yeah.
communication students.
Yeah.
It was promoted to you. But where is the average person going to get,
Yeah.
just
Right.
find and come across that book? So it's
Yeah.
really nice when you bring these different types of books, and I appreciate that from you always.
Yes, yes, and it also inspired me to take an entrepreneurship class while I was in college. So I did like a couple years later. I think it wasn't until my senior year maybe I took an entrepreneurship class. It was it was a short one credit class, but I was thinking about following this path and establishing some type of, media outlet, independent media outlet. That's why I took the class for. That's what I wrote my business plan for in that class. So it definitely had influence on me, impact on me. This, reading this book.
Now let me ask this: now that you've made so many accomplishments in education itself, and you've seen the power of books, and especially being one of those educators that shares so many books with your youth, has revisiting that book inspired you at all to think about your writing legacy, and and making that come to fruition now?
Oh yeah, 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 absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, uh, my experiences just reading all types of books and also seeing people that I know personally, be a part of that legacy has definitely uh, brought me back to that space, and just the experiences, not only with reading but just life experiences, and it definitely gave me some ideas, of what I can put to the paper. If
Right.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And another reason I asked that question is because you do read a lot. And one of the things that I love that you do, that I never really well, no, I'm not going to say I never really did it. I would write small little pieces about what I read, but you really give nice detailed reviews of what you do. And I think that was one of the reasons when I decided to do UnRead, I couldn't think of anybody to do it better with than you, because of the way that we both kind of go in and talk about the books that we've read, and present them to people really with the intention of piquing their interest.
That's
And
right.
that's one of the things you do very well in your writing. So I can only imagine if you had a magazine with book reviews, because I know I get book review magazines a lot, but they only talk about, again, a lot of the new things.
Right.
But someone like you, and what you bring to the table of all these great books that you've read, I can only imagine how a review paper, a review magazine from you would look. So
Yeah.
stay encouraged. Read that book again. Keep Mr. Johnson right there at the front of your library, so he can
Yeah.
continue to inspire you. But that's a
Yeah.
great offering, Nick. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Of course, of course. And when it comes to those reviews, I mentioned authors that I know personally, like or even my friends. So you seen the reviews that I've written for books and authors that I don't know. Now, when it comes to people that I do know, now those are really detailed. Like I'll go ahead and put a full review on Amazon and on Goodreads, not just on my personal social media page. A couple of books that were written by authors that I know. Like I've written, very glowing and detailed, reviews for those individuals. So yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And here in UnRead, we even get to have some of those individuals. So
Yeah,
how
that's
fortunate
right.
are we? And
That's
don't
right.
worry, y'all. We got some more authors coming for you. We just getting them lined up.
That's
As
right.
they say, rest of UnRead is loading. It's loading. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I wanted, if I could, I wanted to share one last thing from
Yeah,
this
of
book,
course.
because this was one of the things that I thought about again with everything that's going on in the world right now. I wanted to share this piece, and this is the story of the Black Troopers.
Okay.
And it says the story of the Black Troopers was also preserved in a popular song of the day entitled "Hats Off to the Boys Who Made Good." And it says the millionaire clubmen, the dudes they would dub them. They say the coon boys would quit, but the hills of San Juan, they were first to come on. Did they fight for our flag, or are they it? The reason this stood out to me is because it involved Teddy Roosevelt. And we know from us talking about history over the years that, Teddy Roosevelt, the Rough Rider, he was one of the presidents that when studying him in school, they made him appealing enough to us to really want to look into him, but we didn't know all of these kind of things. So
right.
it was interesting to go back and read this as an older person with older eyes. So it says, when the Rough Rider Theodore Roosevelt said his final goodbyes to his men, he had some kind words for the Black soldiers who played a vital role in American victory. He said, they can drink out of our canteens, but a few months later, he changed his mind and he found Black heroes particularly and peculiarly dependent on their white officers, and claimed that during the battle, some of them became fearful and began to get uneasy and drift to the rear. Roosevelt said that he had drawn his revolver at one point to use it to prevent their retreat away from the enemy. He was answered by Sergeant Preston Holliday of the 10th Cavalry, who simply pointed out that the retreat that Roosevelt referred to was not a withdrawal at all, but a halt ordered by one of the white officers. But by time Sergeant Holliday's correction appeared, the war was over, and the troops, all except those who had given their lives at San Juan Hill and El Caney. So that stood out to me so much because, here's a man who was supposed to be recognizing the hard work in the sacrifice of our soldiers right next to theirs, and then he went in a short time to bad mouthing them on what they thought they heard, and by time it was a good time to correct it, all of those people were gone. So I think about how many times the narrative about us changes, and how where we were made to look a certain way, but we were the main ones sacrificing our lives in a place where you couldn't even sit at a counter, where you couldn't even go into a bathroom, that you couldn't even drink out of a water fountain because of your color. So I just thought that was interesting, and the fact that they would sing this song in together out loud about calling people coons and things. You know what I mean? And basically saying they were cowards, that they would run away. But so many of them gave their lives. And so I just wanted to, kind of bring that point up too. I learned a lot reading that book. It was interesting when I found that book. And you just think that was so many years ago. I had this book, like so many years ago. I got this book.
Yeah,
and,
you only highlighted just a couple of stories out of there, and I saw how thick that book was too when you held it up. I'm like, it's so much more to learn from that book.
Oh yeah, and you know what? It actually has weight to it too. I mean, you know how some books be thick, but they don't be really heavy. You can feel the weight of the information in here. And it's 335 pages, and then you got your bibliography and all of that good stuff like that.
Right.
But no, I barely scratched the surface. And again, I just wanted to point out again some of the beautiful pictures, because we don't have a lot of images, many of the images we see are the same images over and over again. So, when I found this book and I saw all these different images, I was impressed. I was like, I didn't even think they made us seem like we didn't even have that many pictures of us doing nothing but showing scars on our backs, So again, shout out to my New Jersey education.
Right.
Shout out to my New Jersey education. But I was at the top of my class, right? Yeah, you know how that make you weep sometimes. Yeah. But Nick, I don't know. I think we brought another great week. What do you think? I think they tied in nicely together.
Oh, absolutely. Without a question.
Listen, and it's just the first weekend in Black History Month. We got one more. We'll be back with everybody in 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, y'all. You can join us here on YouTube, and Nick has got us over on IG Live as well as some other platforms. So you'll be able to see us. If you have not been able to join in today, you will be watching a repeat of this on one of those places. So make sure you subscribe to us both so you can get notifications when we are doing these things, because truly we be bringing the heat and the unread books. So I don't have anything else for us this week, Nick. So I'm going to let you take us on out.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode of UnRead Book Review with Nick and Roo. Take care. Peace.